Thank you guys. Thanks for joining. This is our first studio session. So I'm going to spend some time on the Workday Studio navigation, the basic navigation, and to familiar with the Workday Studio environment. During the demo, we discussed about what is Studio and Studio Workday Studio integration, different phases in Studio integration, and we also discussed when we use Workday Studio such things. Okay, let me give a quick recap of these two slides. What is Workday Studio and Studio uh, life cycle phases? Unlike other integration options, EIB and Core Connector, if you want to build the Workday Studio integrations, you should install the software. Workday Studio is an Eclipse-based environment, and you should install that to build the Studio integrations. And it allow you to build the complex integrations, and we already discussed what is meant by complex and all those. Okay, so the first step is install the Workday Studio and prepare your environment, and then you can start creating the Workday Studio integrations. And here you can see the different life cycle phases of the Workday Studio. First, once you install the Workday Studio, we can start designing the Studio integration. And then once the design or development is over, then you will connect to the tenant from the Workday Studio. You will connect to the tenant and you will deploy your Studio integration. After deployment, if you need any configuration, like configuring the retrieval service or configuring the delivery service or any integration attributes or maps or any other configuration, you will log into the tenant, means from the browser you will log into the Workday application, and from there you configure. You cannot configure the Studio integrations from Workday Studio. You can design, deploy, after that connect to the Workday application from the browser and configure there. And once you configure, then you can launch or schedule the integration. You can launch the integration either from Workday Studio or Workday application. Also, whatever the runs you do, you can also monitor those integration runs. And we are going to start with the design. Okay, and as part of the today's session, I will quickly create a very simple studio project. Okay, and then we will also see how to connect to the Workday tenant from the studio and how to deploy our simple studio integration. Okay, I will share a document which explain how to install and configure the Workday Studio. Follow the instructions mentioned in that document. You can install the studio in your machines. Okay, I will share that document how to download and install the Workday Studio, and I have already done that. So okay, so once you install the Workday Studio in the desktop or in the location where you installed, you will see an icon like this, Eclipse shortcut. You will see an icon. Just open this. Okay. Once you open this, then it will ask you, or you have to select a workspace. Workspace is nothing but a folder where all your work or the studio projects that you create will be stored. Read this. Workday Studio stores your projects in a folder called Workspace. So what I'm doing is I have been using this folder to store all my studio projects. And this is my workspace. And if I go to this folder, I can see all my studio projects. You can see. Okay. And if you want to change, click on the browse and you can select some other folder where you want to save your projects and click on OK. And then it will ask you to enter the tenant name, username and password. So if you want to connect to the particular tenant before opening the studio, yes, enter the username and password here, else click on OK. Because you can also connect to the tenant after opening the Workday Studio. Okay, this is optional. Okay, so then it will open the Workday Studio. I have been using this application, so the environment is according to that. But when you open the studio for the first time, for the fresh installation, you will see the welcome screen. For the fresh installation, you will see the welcome screen. And if you want to, at any time, if you want to go to the welcome screen, you can go to the help and click on the welcome. So it will display the welcome screen. And in this welcome screen, you can see the sample Workday Studio integration samples given by Workday. And you can also find the documentation for those samples. Hello Cloud sample, which is like a Hello World application for Java. If you take Java .NET, uh, everybody start that Java or .NET programming with a Hello World programmer application. So like this is a sample, welcome sample, and then we have the sample which explain how to call the web services and test schema. We have a concept called test schema, and here another sample which explains about error handling or exception handling, and a lot of samples. Delivery service, it explains how to configure and use the delivery service in studio integrations. Retrieval service. Okay, so if you want to view that sample, just click on that and you can export and you can view that Workday Studio project sample in your workspace. We will discuss about how to import and how to analyze these samples given by Workday. And here you can find the documentation for those samples. And you will see this welcome screen for the fresh installation. And you can close this. We will come to this screen later. So close this. Then your environment may looks like this, and sometimes may not. If you don't see the environment like this, where you will have something project explorer, cloud explorer, and this kind of okay, you can get this view. I will tell you how to get that. So before going into that different views that we have and all those, let's create a very simple studio project. Okay, so go to the file, and guys, before that, as we have been discussing, Workday Studio is an Eclipse based environment. Here you can develop the yes, studio application, and usually Eclipse is for the Java applications. So you will see a lot of options. You can ignore most of those, and as part of the course, I will show you all the options that we use. Options, views are features that we use as part of studio integrations. Go to the file, new, and Workday assembly project. So go to file, new, Workday assembly project. Click on this, and it will ask for a project name. Give some name. So I'm going to name it like WCT underscore John underscore. Let me use like this, and Studio 1. This is the name of my studio project. See, if you see here, I'm calling this as a studio or assembly project. I'm not calling this as an integration, because we create this studio or assembly project, and once the development is over, then we connect and deploy into the Workday. Then from then we can start calling it as integration. Okay, I haven't deployed into the Workday cloud, so let me refer it as a assembly project. We use the term assembly, or we can also call studio project, and in Workday Studio terminology they call it as assembly project. Okay, this is the project name, and this project will be stored in the workspace that we have selected. See Workday Ishwar Studio. This is the my workspace directory, and in that directory a folder will be created with this name, project name, and all the configuration or files code related to this project will be stored in this folder. And coming to the target runtime, let it be Workday runtime. Okay, and configuration the same. I will explain you what are these later. Okay, configuration assembly with Java support, let it be, and click on next. Then it will ask for the collection selection. Okay, so here you have to give something called collection name. Okay, I will explain you about this later. Ignore this one. Now let it be the name of the project, and click on finish. It will create a assembly project. Whenever I created that project, you can view that in Project Explorer. So Project Explorer is the view, here you can view all the projects that are part of your workspace. Okay, so just now I have created a project with this name AAICT_JN18 Studio 1. So this is the assembly project that I have created, and I can view all the files or additional information related to this studio project, and you can view that under Project Explorer, because these are your local copies. Whenever you create a project, you will see that under Project Explorer, and this is your local copy. And what we do is, here we design. First we design the studio integration locally, then we connect to the tenant and we deploy. Okay, and let me open this. If you open this studio project, you will see different folders or files. First one is SRC, nothing but source folder. SRC, source folder. If you write any additional, sometimes we can write some custom components like a Java code. If you write any, you can find that under SRC folder. And the studio project that we create, it needs Java support also. It needs Java support. So here by default it added the Java JRE libraries, Java runtime libraries, and Workday runtime libraries means all the what is that? I mean, guys, I'm expecting everybody is familiar with the programming. Let me use the terms accordingly. So it's like a Java library, JRE. We have another library for Workday. We call that as Workday runtime. And Workday provides a lot of public web services. You can see that reference here. Okay, these are the references, and these references will be used by our studio project. And the next one is assembly. Double click on this. This is nothing but where you design. See, whenever you select the assembly, it will show this one. We call this as assembly diagram. This space we call it as assembly diagram, and here we design our studio integration. Here we don't write any coding. What based on your requirement, you will use the components given by Workday and you will configure those. And the diagram that you see, that configuration, we call this as assembly diagram, and we call this as in the entire thing as a assembly project. And the next one is member of. It is related to the collection. When we are creating the studio project, it asks us to give the collection name, and I said I will explain it later. So this is related to that, member of. And next, build. So mostly we don't work with this folder, but we work with this WS. You can understand like a Workday Studio, and this stores the metadata information, and here it shows the metadata information, means manifest file and additional information. And here we have another folder WCR-INF, and here you can see the assembly.xml, nothing but our assembly diagram. And whatever the XML or XSLT files that you are going to create as part of, one second guys, sorry. So what are the XML or XSLT files that you create as part of the studio project? You can find those files under this folder WCR-INF. Okay, this is the structure of the studio project, and this is the assembly diagram where we design our studio integration. And assume we have developed our studio integration. Once you create the studio project and once you design, next step is deploy. You have to deploy the studio integration. To deploy the studio integration, first you have to connect to the Workday cloud. From studio you can connect to the cloud repository and deploy your integration. So the next question is how can I connect? So you can establish the connection to the Workday cloud from the studio integration from Cloud Explorer. So from here you can uh, add a new connections. Okay, let me explain in this way. So how the Project Explorer stores your local projects? Cloud Explorer, if you want to connect to the tenant, you can do it from the Cloud Explorer. And here you can see an option called connection details. Click on this. Click on this, and here you can add a new connection. Suppose I'm doing it for the first time. Okay, click on add. Here give the name of some name for your reference. Let's say this is my test tenant. I'm giving the name test, and then give the name of the tenant. Let's say this tenant belongs to some ABC organization, ABC underscore DPT1, and username and password. Username and password to connect to this tenant, and later you can test your connection and click on OK. Then it will establish a connection from your Workday Studio to the Workday Cloud. This is how you can establish a connection from Studio to Workday Cloud. And whenever you install the Studio, by default it will show sandbox and production. So if you want to connect to the, I mean, this is just built-in connections given by Workday. So if you want to connect to the sandbox, just select the sandbox here, enter the name of the tenant, username and password. They don't provide any default connections. They just give the connections with the empty tenant name, username and passwords. Okay, so if you want to connect to the production, select this, enter the tenant name, username and password, test connection, the same process. Okay, and I'm using this one. Let me delete these two. See, these two are given by Workday, so the default ones you cannot remove. So let me add a new one. So here I'm giving IMPL1. I'm going to refer with this name, and here I'm going to give the tenant name. One second, let me enter the tenant name too. Yes, so I have entered the tenant name and I'm clicking on the test connection. Yes, it established the connection and I have the access to deploy studio integration. I have access to launch the integration and I have access to edit the business process of the integration. So let's click on OK and OK, and finally click on OK again. Yes, so here you can see the all the connections. Sandbox and production as the default one. I don't have access to connect to the production tenant, but I do have for a GMS tenant. So, and I have given that connection name as IMPL. So we have connected the tenant. And if you expand this one, once you connect to the tenant and expand this one, here you can see all the studio integrations that were already deployed. Here you can see all which were already deployed. So Project Explorer contains the local copies, and Cloud Explorer, if you connect to any tenant and if you expand this one, here you can see all the uh, you can say tenant copies. These were already deployed. What we do is, whenever you deploy, okay, I will come to that point. So here you can see all the integrations that were already deployed. Now what we do is, once you are done with the development, connect to the tenant and after that deploy your integration in the tenant. So how we can deploy? Right click and select your studio project, right click and deploy to Workday. There is an option called deploy to Workday, and after that select the environment. Where do you want to deploy? I want to deploy this integration in this tenant, implementation tenant. If you connect to the multiple tenants that display those details here, you can select. In my currently I have in my environment, currently I have connected to only implementation tenant, so that details are displayed here. If you connect to the sandbox and productions also, you will see those three connections here. And you can select the Workday environment, in which environment you want to deploy this assembly project. Select that, and here collection being deployed, and nothing but assume. I will explain about the collections later. Okay, as of now, assume that which studio assembly project you want to deploy. You have to select that. Okay, select these two and click on next, next, next. It will be deployed. Currently we are getting the error because we just created the empty project. We haven't added any components to this. You cannot deploy the empty project. Okay, that's why it is showing the error, but later we will add components to that, and at that time we will discuss about how to deploy a proper assembly project. So this is the way. Select the environment and select the project and click on next. It will be deployed. And here we have two checkboxes: show a detailed outline, and another one is include source code in deployed CLAR. This is important one. Include source code in deployed CLAR. So what we can do is, whenever you are going to deploy your studio project, you can deploy that with source code and without source code. You can deploy your studio integration with source code, without source code. Okay, if you deploy with source code, if you want to deploy with source code, select this checkbox, include source code in deployed CLAR. If you check this checkbox, it will deploy along with the source code. Okay, then what is the advantage? Take a scenario. You have developed this assembly project and you have deployed in the tenant, and later you want to make some changes to this integration. You want to make some changes to this integration. Where can I get the latest copy? Or assume I'm the developer of this studio project. I have developed and I have deployed, and I left the organization. Tomorrow you join the team, and as part of some ticket you have to make enhancements to this integration. So where can I get the source code? If our organization doesn't maintain any source code, what happens? And sometimes just assume the previous developers means me. What I have done is I have deployed, and while storing it in the local source repository, I made some changes. I made some changes and I saved in the repository, and the tenant has the different copy. And later tomorrow when you want to make the changes, if they make the changes to the one which is in the repository, and if you deploy it, it has some different configuration with what we have in the tenant. So to avoid all this, usually what we do is, whenever we deploy the integration, we also deploy with the source code. So in that case, what happens is, whenever you want to make the changes to that integration, you will simply connect to that environment, select the project. Let's say this one. This is the studio project or integration that I want to enhance. So simply right click on this studio integration. I'm calling it as the integration because we are in the Cloud Explorer, means server copy, right click and import source. Import source. If the project has the source code, then it will be imported into the project explorer. Means it will import the source code of this integration into the project explorer, and you can make the enhancements. If you don't have, see, it says the source folder for this collection is not available. Means when they uh, deployed this studio integration, they didn't deploy along with the source code. They didn't deploy along with the source code. So that's why I'm unable to import the source code. And how can I make the changes to this integration if we don't have the local copy? Okay, that is the advantage of that checkbox. Mostly we always deploy our integrations along with the source code. Let me check if we have any such integration, because there was during the last refresh we lost all the data. Otherwise we would have many. Yeah, like
So
this.
what was the refresh? Which one actually?
No, tenant refresh. They have cleared all the data that we have created. Could you please be on mute? They have cleared all the data. So during that time we lost all the projects that were already deployed. I have deployed these many. Okay, I have deployed these many integrations, today integrations earlier, but during that refresh we lost all the data. Okay, so here this project studio integration was deployed along with the source code, so I'm able to import this source. When I use this import source, it's saying okay, clear contents, means that studio integration content. Guys, there are few uh, what is that terms like collection, clear. This we will discuss later, because there is some dependency to discuss those points. So that's why I'm not explaining what is a clear and why it is saying clear contents when we try to import the Studio Pro integration. Okay, we will discuss all those later, and simply click on finish. See, this project is now imported into our workspace, and I will open the project. If you go here, assembly, okay, this is the studio project, and here I can make some changes. And once you make the changes, select the project, right click, deploy to Workday, select the Workday environment, and select the project, and here again it is selected. If you click on next, so what I have done is I have select the environment, project, and then I have selected this checkbox, so that it will be deployed along with the source code. Later I can import again. Click on next, and again it's about see that collection. See, move collection to the right. Again it's related to the collection. This pop-up, we will discuss that later, and click on finish. Okay, if you click on finish, then this project will be deployed into the tenant again. Okay, and once you connect to, or sorry, deploy that, you can go to your Cloud Explorer, and here you can see that. I just deployed. And if you want to run the integration after the deploy, if you want to run the integration, right click. Okay, means you have to go to, I will explain how to start later. Launch integration. You can do this. Okay, so this is the process. When you create, it will be in Project Explorer. Later, you have to make a connection. It means you have to establish a connection to the required environment. Deploy. While deploying, deploy along with the source code so that you can import it later and you can enhance the integration. And if you want to have that checkbox, which I mentioned, that deploy along with the source code, if you want to uh, always check that checkbox, go to preferences window preferences, and here you will see deployment in Workday. So here you can see the different preferences in Workday. If you expand, there is an option deployment. Select this checkbox and click on OK. If you do this setting here, it makes sure the checkbox is always checked whenever you try to deploy a studio project. Okay, and now so far we are discussing about how to create a studio project and how to connect to the tenant and all those. Okay, let me open the project that we have created. Okay, this is the studio project, and we just created this. And if you want to design the studio integration, open the assembly diagram. Open the assembly diagram, and in this space you can design your integration. And while working with these, sometimes just assume by mistake you have closed these. If you want to get those back, then go to window, and here you can go to the show view and select project explorer. If you close any one of those views, select show view and project explorer. It will show you the project explorer. Next, again go to window, show view and cloud explorer. You can get those views back. Okay, and sometimes you may see the different environment. Suppose if all these options got changed, okay, what you can do is go to, let me close this again, go to window, open perspective, go to the other and select Workday default, and let me click on OK. See, okay, this is, let's say, earlier we discussed about the show view or something, show view, and we have selected, one second, earlier when you close the project explorer or cloud explorer, if you want to get those back, go to window, show view and select this project explorer or cloud explorer or whatever you want. I will explain about the other options later. And sometimes what happens is the entire appearance may change. Just assume you clicked on the debug, you clicked on something, and I mean the environment changed like this, or you by mistake you have selected something else, it got changed. Then if you want to get the Workday environment, means the environment which allow you to, or which help you to develop the studio integration, Workday studio integration, what you can do is you can select the Workday. See here, you can select the Workday, or you can go to the window, open perspective, and select other, and here you have an option Workday. See, this is a Eclipse. Workday Studio is an Eclipse based environment, and here you can develop the different kind of applications. You can develop Workday or web, or you can develop the Java, means you can write the Java coding. Okay, you can write the JavaScript, XML, etc. So what this IDE, Eclipse IDE, will do is it provided features or options to make the development easier. And whenever you develop the Workday project, if you select Workday perspective, nothing but the environment, you can assume environment. Okay, if you select the Workday perspective and click on OK, then it will show you the view or this environment which help you to develop the Workday Studio projects. If you select the XML, this environment help you to write the XML or work with the XML files. If you select debug perspective, this environment help you to debug your studio projects. Whenever you want to debug your studio project, you will come to this environment or perspective, and whenever you do the development, you will come to this perspective, Workday perspective. And whenever you need these views, Project Explorer, Cloud Explorer, go to window, show view, Cloud Explorer, window, show view, Project Explorer, like this. And then go to the project that you have created and double click on this one. It will open the assembly diagram. Here you can start designing your integration. Now when I say design, yes, do you have to write any code? No. Here in Workday Studio, what all we do is Workday already provided components. Whatever the task you want to do, that as part of the integration, Workday already delivered the components, and you use those components. See, like this. So in the assembly diagram, we use the means in the assembly diagram we design this studio project by using the components given by Workday. There is a component to connect to the uh, report. There is a component to call a web service. There is a component to read a file. There is a component to save a file. So here what we do as part of the studio integration, what we do is first you have to identify the component. Based on the requirement, you have to identify the component and configure that component. Whenever you run the integration, that component will behave based on the configuration that you do, and you can find all those components here in the palette. You can find all the components delivered by Workday. There are in transport component, out transport components, common components, error handlers. See, those are categorized and we can use those. In simple, all the exception or error handling related components can be found here. All the transform means the component which help you to transform data from one format to another format can be found here. Some validations, what the components which can be used to do the validations in the data validations or XML file validations can be found here. In transport or out transport, like if you want to send the file to some other location, you need some like it's kind of delivery service, but here we have few components, FTP, SFTP. You can use those components also. What I do is, part of the course I will take few requirements and I will explain, hey, if you as okay, for this requirement, this is the logic, means this is how we can build the integration, and for this we need these components, and for this component this is how we have to set the property, and this will behave like this when you set this configuration. I will explain that. Yes, any queries so far? Okay, let me pause the recording. Yes, Denny, do you have any queries?
Yeah, one question. Does the Workday Studio Local it will will it change with the version of the current release?
Yes, yes. Every release, after every release, if there is any changes in the studio, yes, they will give you the new build. You can upgrade the your Workday version to the latest, or you can, generally what happens is, we have observed, there are some. I mean, 1 second. So what we do is, means what they do is, whenever there is a new release, every year there are two releases, right? At that In that release, if there is any change to the Workday Studio, yes, they will give a new build. Means you can upgrade the existing studio to the new, or you can download and install. Means you can uninstall the existing one and you can install the new one. You can do either. And we have observed that upgrading is causing some issues. So generally, mostly we are uninstalling the existing version and installing the new one.
And is it available free on the
No,
web?
no. Currently, the download link is available in the community.
So how can we download if we have to download?
Yeah, if you have the access to the community, then you can download. But here we will share that link from where you can download. And see, the link is available in the community, but it doesn't require you to log in. Okay, we will share a document from where you can download the Workday Studio, and it also have the instructions to install.
Okay.
Is there any prerequisite to install before this studio?
That document will explain step by step guide.
Will you send in that tonight?
Yes, I'm going to do that. And for your information, that document explain how you can download and install the Workday Studio. But coming to the practice, you cannot practice the studio integrations from your machines. So currently, how you are accessing the tenant from our remote machines? Yes, studio also you are going to do from our servers. Okay, and at end of the tomorrow session, I will explain how you can connect to the remote desktop and how to practice the studio project. It's slightly different from how you are currently connecting to your Workday tenant. So at end of the tomorrow session, I will explain that too.
So will we able to practice everything, Ishwar, or
Yeah,
we
no, yes,
will we have any problems?
no, you will be able to practice everything, but the way you are going to connect to the tenant is different. Okay, Yeah, guys, we are recording this session. Do you have any technical queries? These, yes. If you don't have any, I will stop the recording and we can have this discussion.
Fine.
Okay, let me stop.